Can this little Qantas link what Herpa has done with this aircraft model with our expectations for it? Well, we'll find out right after the drop, thanks to the great prices of the FMB shop. Do check them out, there's a link to them in the video description below. And with that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we today will take a closer look at an Embraer ERJ-190 of QantasLink. At the front of the box, we have a lovely image of the aircraft in real life, and on top of that we have the Qantas branding. We can then open the box here halfway, where we get more information as to the airline and the aircraft. If you want to know more about that, feel free to pause the video here. That of course then reveals a cutout, so we can get a glimpse of the aircraft model inside. On the back side of the box we then have a rendition of the aircraft, and that's about it. But still a overall pretty decent box design. Before we dive into the model, it is worth mentioning that it does come with a stand, however just the cheapest of the cheap plastic stands from Herpa Wings here, going all in with their premium scale 200 products. So yeah, the stand certainly could not convince me so far, but perhaps the model can do better. And here she is, the Embraer ERJ-190 in the current standard livery of QantasLink, a subsidiary of Qantas. Nowadays, Herpa does produce many of their Scale 200 models in metal, which of course is a good thing. However, the Embraer is still a full plastic model, which is a major drawback, but we will talk more about that a little bit later in the video, because first we simply focus on the aircraft model itself to see what it has to offer to collectors. And as always, we start our tour around the aircraft model with a look at the tail section, where we on the vertical stabilizer have the iconic Qantas branding. On top of the stabilizer we then have the last two letters of the registration code, and when we then look at the side here on the fuselage, we get the Embraer branding, we have the flag of Australia and the full registration code of course as well, and we have some lovely detailing around and at the cabin doors. Underneath the tail of the aircraft we also have a lovely little printed detail, and of course then also the detailing around the APU exhaust, looking really quite lovely here. If we then move to the front of the aircraft and look across the fuselage, we have the writing of QantasLink. Next to the cabin door we then find a One World logo, of which the airline is an affiliate member through its parent company Qantas. And then of course again we have some lovely detailing in and around the cabin doors. We do also find a few other markings here on the fuselage, and underneath the cockpit windows we have the Qantas logo. That moves us then right to the cockpit section itself, which is definitely also worth taking a closer look at, because here again we have a plethora of small printed details looking really very nice, with for example petty tubes, but of course we also have the cockpit windows with the window wipers. But we also have some small markings on the radome, so overall here really lovely work from Herpa Wings. So let's see how they have done with the engine nacelles. Now they have of course been kept in all white, just as most of the fuselage, but we do have the silver leading edge printed on, as well as some safety markings and again the iconic Qantas logo. So that actually looks pretty decent. The physical detailing of these engines is even more decent, I would say quite lovely when we look at it. Very, very nice indeed. Then on the fuselage, just above the wings, we have the emergency exits printed on, and that leads us straight to the wings, which we should also take a closer look at. Starting off with the top side, where we have the different flap slats and spoilers carved out quite nicely, with the markings as to where to walk on the wing included with some writing here, and of course the markings for the emergency exits printed on as well. The underside of the wings has more nice physical detailing with the lovely pylons, and of course the full registration code of the aircraft has been printed on as well once again. And then the E90 also has these lovely winglets looking really rather nice with the Qantas red and the Qantas branding on the inner side. My personal highlight on the wings, however, is simply the addition of the landing lights as a printed detail. Then we have the landing gear, and this is really the only part of this aircraft model where Herpa has actually partially used metal parts. But overall, I mean, it looks quite nice. It's just not as interactive as with many other Scale 200 manufacturers, so the landing gear is pretty much fixed in its position, but at least the wheels do roll. And of course, something that makes me happy is the fact that we do have printed details around the front landing gear. Something perhaps not surprising for other diecast manufacturers in Scale 200, but definitely worth mentioning with Herpa Wings is the fact we do have physical antennas on this little Embraer E90. They are of course also made entirely out of plastic, making me a little bit nervous that they could break, but they are surprisingly sturdy. And of course, with enough force you would be able to break any antennas regardless of them being plastic or metal. For this model, I think Herpa has done a pretty decent job with them. They do look quite nice in my opinion. On the belly of the aircraft, we then find the QantasLink branding, of course slightly impaired by a hole in the fuselage, but as we have seen, there is a stand included with this aircraft model. Still, I think it's not the ideal solution, but I mean, at least it makes sense in this case. And then finally, we do of course also have the doors to the cargo compartments printed on here at the back of the aircraft and also here at the front of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Embraer ERJ-190 in the current standard livery of QantasLink from Herpa Wings in scale 1-200. And what can we say about this aircraft model? I mean, to be honest, I think apart from maybe a few minor drawbacks, I think overall this is a pretty decent scale 200 model from Herpa Wings. I think the Embraer mold they have nailed pretty much down. I think we have some really lovely printed detail, and also the physical detailing overall is really nice. I mean, the engines look brilliant. Of course, with other diecast manufacturers, the landing gear would have more features than we see here, but I mean, again, overall from just looking at the model, this is solid. It's of course not innovative. I mean, for example, with JC Wings, we would most likely have such a model in various, well, configurations with flaps down, with flaps up, and so on and so on. Here we just have this one version, and Herpa will never ever revisit this model. Still, it's not a bad model. And I don't want to hate on it just because it is completely made out of plastic. In fact, production-wise, there can be some benefits to making such a model out of plastic, as some details might simply be much easier and much more precisely made when it is formed out of plastic instead of metal. But, and this is a very big but, there is of course the drawback that the model just feels very much cheaper when it's made out of plastic rather than metal. Now, I got it at a special sale from the FMB shop for around 35 euros, I believe. The official retail price set by Herpa Wings for this aircraft model is 70 euros. And I'm very sorry, but this model will never be worth 70 euros. 35 euros, on the other hand, is a very realistic price for such a model and reflects the true value of what we have in front of us. So I do feel bad for our retailers having to discount the model so heavily, because there can't be much, if any, earnings left in that deal for them. Herpa, of course, have already gotten their money, so they don't care. But 35 euros, I remain, is simply the correct price for a product like that. And this is the problem with Herpa Wings Scale 200 models when they continue to make them out of plastic. On paper, 70 euros for a Scale 200 model sounds cheap, especially when you look at the detailing you get for it, but when you then know that it is made entirely out of plastic, it's a horrendous price and cannot compete with any other Scale 200 diecast manufacturers. So if we ignore the official retail price from Herpa Wings, what we have in front of us here is, in my opinion, a really lovely Scale 200 plastic model, but still very nicely detailed and overall with a very lovely finish. But would that be enough to convince you to get such a model in your collection? Let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section below. And with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. If you have enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like. If you're new around here, why not hit subscribe? And with that, see you in another video very soon here on the channel. I'm checking out, and bye.